Welcome to the final instant reaction podcast of the regular season with the Seahawks winning their final game. I'm not sure it's a performance that anybody is going to be talking about for years to come, but they've won the game. They finished 12-4, and they are the number 3 seed. The Panthers hung with the Saints for a little while, but then ended up getting blown out. The Bears likewise stuck around with the Packers for a large part of their game, and then got blown out. So it is the number 3 seed. I am in a lot of pain. You may see me putting my fingers in a. I burnt my fingers while cooking a meal earlier. So I'm in a tremendous amount of pain. It is a really bad burnt pair of fingers. So if I scream loudly during the podcast, you'll know why. Robbie, were you screaming much during that game?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I was just screaming, "Russ, what are you doing?" Or just stuff like that. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we won the game, and I think, obviously, I think the right team won, and it's just a frustrating game to watch us come out and kind of play like that, and really just seemed like we just weren't going well, and you just think, man, they really need to start to catch fire before the playoffs. Like, what's happening here? And that this Niners team is well coached, so they come out and they're ready to play, and they're getting after it, and it got a little chippy, and as you expect with these NFC West games. So yeah, I mean, I was a little fired up, but I mean, I'm really happy. 12-4. I mean, I'm super happy with the season. I mean, there are a lot of things that I take away from this season that as much crap as we've given them and everything like that, you can't argue 12-4. Like, this is just the way it is, and this is how we're playing, and I'm just hoping that we could catch a little magic in the playoffs. Like, this game didn't give me any high hopes like, oh, we're Super Bowl bound or anything like that. But like I said, anything can happen in the playoffs. Maybe we catch fire, but I was hoping it to happen a little earlier. Maybe that fourth quarter was when we finally started getting it. I think I like to see us play a little more up tempo going forward in the playoffs, because we're going to need it.
Well, I'm happy with the win, Robbie. I mean, I think it's always good to beat the Niners, especially when they are really trying to win. I mean, and that's the thing. They really, really wanted to win that game today. They really wanted to finish on a high. They'd beaten the Cardinals, who have missed the playoffs. I mean, and the Cardinals they're a crap team. They're not. They don't deserve to be a playoff team, in my opinion. They've had 2 quite fortunate wins against the Seahawks and the Bills. I mean, of all the teams, a 12-win team and a 13-win team. But I don't think they deserve to be in the postseason. I think they're a long way off being a contender. And I think in general, the NFC West has not been as spectacular as many people thought because of the injuries to the Niners. The Cardinals are flattered to deceive. The Rams, again, can look great one week and awful the next. And the Seahawks have finished 12-4. And I think what I really hope doesn't happen, and I kind of wrote a blog post about this a few days ago, was it? It feels like Christmas has come and gone in a flash, so it could have been 3 weeks ago for all I remember. I just hope that people can appreciate that you can say fair play, they finished 12-4, that's a good season in terms of win losses, but you all of the concerns and complaints, whether it was after the Giants game or after the Bills game or after the first Rams game or after the Washington game, they were legitimate concerns. And we could sit here, Robbie, and we could say what you've just said. Oh, let's hope they catch fire in the playoffs, which to me just seems a little bit like blind faith, really. This idea that, well, the playoffs will happen and then all of a sudden a switch will come on and Russell Wilson will go back to playing the way he did early in the season, just isn't realistic to me. I mean, there are some concern if in terms of Seattle's postseason opportunity and their potential, it seems quite limited to me while ever the offense is playing this way. I don't think they can go to Lambeau, for example, and muddle around for 3 quarters like they've done in some games and then hope to dig out a couple of drives at the end and beat Aaron Rodgers. That is not going to happen, in my opinion. And I don't necessarily think they can do that against the Saints either. And we'll see if they can do it against the Rams next week. And they are going to have to be better than this in order to be any kind of threat in the postseason. But we can still sit here and say 12-4. You can't complain at 12-4. Whatever the complaints are, the end result is you never, as a fan or as a podcaster or as a blogger, can you turn around and go, I am not happy with the 12-4 season. That's just ridiculous to do that. Part of me wishes they hadn't blown one of the Cardinals games or the Giants games, Robbie, because they'd have been the number 1 seed right now. And, that's just better than being number 3. But at the same time, you can't complain about a 12-4 season.
Yeah, and I mean the thing that's really worrisome going into the playoffs is some of the injuries that we got today, and you start looking at you're playing Aaron Rodgers, and I mean that guy. You're right. We can't mess around and let them get a huge lead and then try to play catch up against a team like that. The thing is, one thing I take away from it though is that we seem to play at our level of our opponent, right? So I mean, if we're playing the Packers, we probably play a lot better, or hopefully we play a lot better. I mean, we were in almost every game this year, even the ones we lost. Even the games we won, it was all close. So I mean, we played it seemed to that level of opponent. So hopefully that trend can continue and give ourselves a chance going to the playoffs. And you're right. I mean, it is blind hope, but I mean, what at this point you gotta, with the way they're playing, you gotta wonder like how. I mean, what else do you put your faith in, right? You got to put it in hope and just hope that they do catch fire, because there's nothing else you can really look at. I mean, there's no like statistical thing that you say, well, if we just do this, we're going to for sure go to the Super Bowl. I mean, right now it's just hope and faith that, we start catching fire and something happens. And Russ needs to really play a lot better. Most of my complaints today were thrown at him or Shaq Griffin. And so, yeah, I think just a lot of it, falls on Russ just needing to make quicker decisions, and I think he's a little afraid of the turnover right now, and he just needs to go out there and sling it and hope for the best, because this is what's going to get us further, and we need to score points a lot faster than we are, especially when we're playing, an Aaron Rodgers offense or something like that. We're going to really need it, and the Rams are going to present another big test for us. I mean, just because we won last week doesn't mean anything going this next week. The Rams are still a really good football team, and I don't know if if Goff's playing or not, but it's going to be a big test for us, and we're going to have to go out and prove it again.
Well, Sean McVay has already done his post-game press conference, and there seemed to be a degree of confidence in the week that Jared Goff would play next week. But then in his post-game, he has said words that are a lot less confident about that. They're going to wait and see. I mean, I think it would be incredible for Jared Goff to have thumb surgery and miss only 1 week, frankly. I mean, I think the Rams are going to have a big choice to make here. They've seen what, I think it's John Walford or whatever he's called, who played today. They've seen what he can do, so they know what they're going to get probably next week. And they need to determine whether or not they think they've got a chance to get through that game against Seattle with this guy starting. Or do they have to, because it's the last game of the season, do they have to throw Goff out there and hope for the best? I think the worst thing they could do is do that, Robbie, and then feel like they need to make a change 2 series in, because then you've probably spent the whole week preparing one quarterback and then you go to the other. So they're going to have to make a call on that. I would imagine that it's probably going to be the guy who started today, which would give us all a greater sense of confidence going into this game, because he's not got much starting experience. But then you only have to remember that a few weeks ago, we were all sort of, swanning around like we own the place because they were playing Colt McCoy. And what happened there? And they nearly blew a 17-point lead in the final quarter against Dwayne Haskins. So, I mean, today they almost lost to CJ Beathard. So I'm not going to do a victory lap if Jared Goff doesn't play. It might actually even be better if he does. It might actually benefit Seattle more that he plays. So that is going to be an interesting game. And it is one that we'll talk about again in the week, because I just dab my fingers with a bit more ice because they are absolutely killing me. I've got the feed up here, Robbie, to try and Pete Carroll is going to do his press conference while we're speaking, and we'll try and get some live reaction to what he said, because one of the big stories from the game is that Jamal Adams, I think he was trying to do a blitz or a rush off the edge, and he kind of got chipped, and it seemed quite incidental contact, really. That it's not like he got blown off the line or anything like that. But he left the game. He went into the medical tent. He threw his helmet down. He sat there with a face like a wet weekend for the rest of the game. And, and there was one point near the end where I think it was Clint Hurt came up to him and said something to him. And Jamal Adams was like shaking his head and looking really dejected. If it was just upset because he couldn't finish the game, I think that would have gone by the time Seattle were racking up the points and winning the game at the end. I think he would have been celebrating that if they were just being, cautious with him. To me, his body language suggested that he might feel like he's done something here, and he might miss next week or even be out for the playoffs. I'm trying to see if we can sort of get some reaction to that when it happens, because Pete Carroll is going to speak any second now. That has to be a concern there, Robbie, from this game, as is, I suppose, the fact that Jaron Reed left the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Pete will be able to give us any information on Jamal even in this interview. I guess we'll know probably by Wednesday or something like that. But yeah, super worrisome on his shoulder. I mean, I don't know if he separated and they popped it back in or I don't really know. If I had to guess, just knowing the kind of player Jamal Adams is, whatever it is, he's going to play. But it didn't look very good. I mean, I guess he's going to probably wrap it up and just give it a go. But I don't know if that's a good thing, to be honest with you. I really don't. And it's more, and it is concerning. Jaron Reed goes out and we just cut snacks. And we were talking about this going into, in our pregame show, talking about how, what happens if we get an injury on the D line, and now we have it. So, I mean, what do we do? Do we go out and, is Brandon Mebane still available? Like, I mean, what do we do at this point? We need a little more depth on that D line if Jaron Reed isn't able to go, and he had a core injury, and I don't really know what that means, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the injuries play out. And luckily, with Jamal Adams, I mean, Ryan Neal does a good job, but he is no Jamal Adams, so we definitely need him on the field. But at least Ryan Neal is a capable backup and can play for a game if we need him to. But you really want to, you feel bad for Jamal because he's never played in the playoffs before. So if he can't go, I mean, it must be something severe. That's why I mean, I know he looked dejected on the field or on the sidelines and just didn't look like he was very happy. But my guess is he'll probably try to give it a go.
Well, he may well do. I'm not a professional athlete or a football player, but I have had a shoulder injury my lifetime. The only two real kind of injuries that I've had, I've broken my ankle several times, my right ankle. I've had a real bad sprain. I kind of feel like a bit of an expert when it comes to sprained or broken ankles, because my broken ankle, I played soccer within 6 weeks again with a break, and with the sprain, I didn't play for a year. So, that's the kind of difference between those two. Bones tend to heal. With a shoulder injury, I'm quite tall, and I do good at the gym and stuff like that, and very regularly because of my height and bad posture, I will pick up injuries, with its shoulders, back injuries. It's all part of being 6'4" and not a professional athlete. That's one of the problems of being this tall. So I've had shoulder injuries, and they can be a real bugger. And
you sound like a bit of a pansy there, Rob.
Yeah, well, perhaps so.
I've just been messing with you.
It's quite all right. It's I like a bit of banter. I'm up for that. I'm not so delicate. I can take that. And maybe Jamal Adams isn't quite as much of a pansy as me, but they can hurt. They can hurt, these shoulder injuries, and if it's an AC joint, if he can't move his arm, and that's an issue. I mean, if he can't get off a block because he can't raise his arm and he can't use his arm with any force, and if he can't, use his hands because of that, it could be a real problem. I don't want to speculate too much because we don't know what it is, but to me, his body language went beyond "I'm disappointed I've picked up an injury" to "I'm worried." And if it is a worrying injury, people will know about it now. If it's touch and go, you're right, we won't know until, well, probably next weekend, whether or not he can play or not, when Adam Schefter will no doubt tweet on Friday or Saturday night whether he's playing or not. So we'll find out.
I do wonder, though. I do wonder if Pete will even tip his hand this early. You know what I mean? Like going in the playoffs, he might not say anything. He just might be like, "Oh, we'll have to wait and see." I wonder if we might not find any information out, just for that simple fact that he might, even if he knows that Jamal can't play, he might not say anything.
Maybe, but I think sometimes it's quite hard to hide these things, and Jamal Adams, it didn't exactly go straight into the locker room and hide away. We had like a quarter of his facial expressions to deal with there. So we'll see. As I say, Carroll is, if he's not talking already, but he's not, but he will be soon. So hopefully we'll have some reaction to that. One of the things that I think is sort of a takeaway from all of this, Robbie, is the Seahawks were 5-0 before the bye. They've now finished 7-4 to finish the year. There was the game against Arizona where for 3 quarters it was the same old offense, throwing it all over the place, scoring loads of touchdowns, putting points on the board. And then that fourth quarter in the overtime against Arizona was when things started to grind down. I think people have said before the bye, the way that Mike Zimmer and Minnesota played the Seahawks maybe gave teams a bit of a hint on how to slow down, let Russ cook, as we kind of frame those 5 games, 6 games as. And then after that, it's been different. Now, the stats are in the first half of the season, Russell Wilson had 28 touchdowns. In the second half of the season, he's had 12. In this game, I didn't know what I was watching, Robbie, for three quarters. You know, I was quite worried because he looked awful. I mean, you know, people have hammered us for even daring to mention Carson Wentz's name as a comparison, and I've never said he's at Carson Wentz's level. Wentz was benched, but he's always kind of looked a little bit just above that level, and he's not playing well. And then right in the fourth quarter, he pulls out two great drives. And then, you know, it'd be very easy off the back of this game to go, well, they won. They were great in the fourth quarter. Everything's okay. I personally feel there was a bit of that after the Washington game. Like, they won, the Jets beat the Rams, so everything was hunky-dory. Yet they were a pass to wide open Logan Thomas away from losing that game. And I kind of feel like we shouldn't really bury this just because they've won today. How concerning is Russell's performance? Because as good as this defense is playing, as good as the special teams is, as good as the running game can be, they're still going to need Russell Wilson to be a bit like Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, super concerning, right? I mean, he was by far the most frustrating player for me today watching him play, just for the simple fact that I felt like every throw was either too high, decisions weren't made. I mean, you could see clearly on the screen there was guys that he just didn't hit fast enough. There was a rollout that he had Hollister open for that he just decided not to throw and then waited to the last minute, and then he had to throw way over his head and throw it out of bounds. And it's, there's plays like that. He just needs to be a little quicker on his decisions. Now, I have all the faith in the world that Russ can pull it out. I just don't know what's going on. Like right now, I'm worried. Like, is there an injury? Is there something that, like, is he just playing rattled? Is he just like trying too hard not to, to turn the ball over? I'm not really sure what it is. I mean, you could see that he was definitely wanting to feed DK and Tyler today so they could get those, those records for the Seahawks, and that's great on them for that and getting that done. But I want to see him play with a little more urgency. I like the up tempo stuff. Get the ball moving, get it going, and I really want to just see him go out and just play a little looser because I feel like he's playing stiff right now. And in the fourth quarter when it's like crunch time, it's when he seems to turn it on. So we just need to see that for all four quarters because I mean we're not going to be able to like you said, we're not going to be able to hang with the Packers and give them let them jump out to a huge lead or something and then try to have to catch back up. That's not going to work. We need to go out and play scoreboard pressure and make the other team try to beat us because our defense is playing well right now. And who would have said that, going 8-10 weeks ago, I would have never believed we would be in this situation talking about how bad Russ is playing and how much better the defense is playing. So yeah, it's super concerning, but I mean, we'll just have to wait and see how it goes in the playoffs. I mean, like I said, anything can happen. I'm not saying that, we're destined for like that, but I have a blind hope and faith that maybe something could happen. You never know.
So the news is in on Jamal Adams. According to Pete Carroll, he says he's hurt his shoulder. We'll see what that means. The early stuff from the trainers is that he'll play next week. Now, I appreciate that this is a man who, at various points in the season, has said Darrell Taylor's going to work out next week. Oh, no, Darren Taylor's not going to work out next week. Darrell Taylor's going for a second opinion next week. Oh, no, that's been pushed back to next week. Darrell Taylor's had a second opinion. Oh, he's not going to be back at all. Oh, he's going to be back next week. Oh, no, he's not going to. We don't know, and maybe he'll be out forever. I don't know. This is a man who has often said one thing and the opposite's happened. So, but at least that is somewhat encouraging that Pete Carroll has said that the early expectation is he's going to play next week. Jaron Reed, an oblique strain. I have never had an oblique strain. I mean, I always worry when it's sort of that core area, Robbie, that it's the dreaded sports hernia that has reared its head. I don't think you can actually, if you have a sports hernia that's created during a game, that just kind of means you've got a hole in your stomach that's been created in the game. So, unless there was a sniper in the stands, hopefully that's not happened. So hopefully he's going to be okay. I don't know. Maybe you've got more info on it on an oblique strain. And with Rashad Penny, it was cramp, and it was obviously cramp because he was pulling his toes back. So that was just the fact that he's been out for a year and a bit more workload, and there's nothing to worry about with that.
Yeah, the oblique strain makes me a little nervous just because I know that, especially a guy his size. I mean, it's the twisting and bending that's going to be hurting and something. That's why he was probably hunched over and, dealing with that. So, I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, so I don't know if he'll be able to play next week. But I can definitely tell you that that's probably super painful. I mean, I've had, you know, stuff like that before where it's super uncomfortable. So, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I mean, it's a bummer and like it's just frustrating that we let Snacks go right after the right before this happened, and like now we're short on the D line, and you got to wonder where we're gonna go with that.
Yeah, I wonder if
Going
they'll
back,
regret. I wonder if they'll regret not just making him active last week for the
yeah,
sake of having him on
yeah,
the roster.
yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah, who knows? We're gonna need to do something now. We'll see probably a couple roster moves for the D line. But just going back to the game, a couple things that I want to talk about, Rob, that I kind of want to mention that before I forget about it is Alex Collins just looks good every time he touches the football, and I would like to see that guy back next year. I know with Carlos Hyde being a free agent and Chris Carson being, I'm not saying make him the starter or anything like that, but like I'd like to see him back on a 1-year deal and see, I think he adds really good depth, and I'd like to see him getting the ball a lot more than say Travis Homer or DJ Dallas. So for me, I really like the way he ran the football today. So I'd really like to see him come back, and I felt like when he was playing a few weeks ago before he got injured, he was playing really well then too. I like his style of running. He seems to hit the hole hard, and he has good vision. So I just I'd like to see someone like him get a few more opportunities. I liked what he did today. And then man, I'm gonna complain a little bit more about Shaq Griffin. I just feel like he just got picked apart today, and I don't know what it is. Like sometimes he plays pretty good, but and I guess you have to have a lot of confidence as a corner, but like I feel like there was like 1 or 2 times where the ball was overthrown and he was just like celebrating like he made the best play in the world, but had nothing to do with him. But then he was just getting eaten up, and especially on one of the running plays, he tried to cut on the inside as Wilson ran around the outside, and just it was like it blew my mind that his gap control. He didn't even step out to the outside to stop him from going down the sideline, and he tried to should have had him come back in towards Bobby and KJ, which were right there. Just super frustrating play by him, and I just can't see us paying him big money going forward. And I don't know. I know a lot of people like Shaq, and they think he could be the best that we have, but I think we really are going to be looking at 2 different starting corners next year.
Well, I hope that DJ Reed gets a chance to be this starting cornerback next year. But I think the problem with Shaquille Griffin is that he's just fine, isn't he? He's fine. He's okay. And on a rookie contract, having taken him in round 3, that's palatable. There's nothing wrong with him being a starter, and he's not great, but he's not really bad either. He's not a liability. He's not a liability. He gives up some plays. He makes some plays. He good open field tackle at one point tonight. Gave up a big play downfield. I don't think it was purely on him. I think that was kind of a zone concept, wasn't it? But he was the corner in the vicinity. I'm not a huge X and O's guy. It's hard to be an X and O's guy based on a TV replay. He was the guy there on the downfield pass. And I think the problem that they've got now, Robbie, and it's the same with a few other guys. It's what they've not got a lot of money next year. They really don't. They don't have much money, and they only have 3 or 4 draft picks. So how are they going to, find solutions here? Because if you pay Shaquille Griffin a lot of money, I don't think he's got a hard value as a decent-ish corner, and that's it. And anything more than a decent-ish salary is an overpay. With Chris Carson, you've got to be careful because he's injured too much. He misses too much time. They've had to basically manage his snaps when he has been healthy this year, and then he's missed several games on top of that. And they're basically just getting him through to the playoffs because they don't want to lose him for the playoffs. Now, you can't have an expensive running back on your roster that you basically have to wrap in cotton wool for 16 games and hope that he's available for the postseason. You need somebody who's going to be there, for most of your games, including the regular season. So there's an issue with Carson. And then, he's not the only one. I mean, there are others too. I mean, like, what do you do with KJ Wright? I think KJ Wright has played far too well to let him wander off into the sunset. But he's on $10 million this year. And how much is he going to be worth on the open market? And you drafted a linebacker last year. and you've got Jamal Adams coming up. Now, Jamal Adams is going to ask for $20 million a year. I know a lot of people just, be fine, he's going to extend Jamal Adams, yay, 9 sacks, Jamal Adams. He's going to ask for $20 million a year. And he might not get $20 million a year, but he's certainly not going to get any lower than, I would say, 18, because Budda Baker's deal is worth $15 million a year. And the Seahawks have no leverage, and we've gone over this a million times with Laramie Tunsil and Jalen Ramsey, that they reset the market for their positions because the teams had traded multiple first-round picks for them. And the only other option to not paying them what they want is to let them walk away eventually, having spent 2 first-round picks plus on those players. And the Seahawks cannot afford to let Jamal Adams walk off into the sunset in 2 years' time. And I personally don't think they can afford to allow him to go into a contract year, because all of the issue with the Jets was based on the fact they won't pay him this year. And that will just transfer to the Seahawks if they don't pay him this year. And then you've got him on the franchise tag. So you've got to potentially pay Jamal Adams a huge salary as well. So you've got lots of question marks coming up this offseason, of which Shaquille Griffin is one of those. And it is going to be very interesting to see what the Seahawks do with this. And no doubt we will talk about it in the massive amount of time, Robbie, that we'll have between this season ending and the next one starting. I wanted to just quickly bring up one other thing before I want to finish off talking about a big news story that broke today and the playoffs in general. The Seahawks were 4 of 12 on third down again. And, while we're talking about things that need to be better, and Russell is one of those third down numbers can't be they've just been awful all year. I'd love to know where the Seahawks rank in third down conversion rate. I would imagine it's in the bottom sort of 10, at least the bottom 10, if not the bottom 5 for the season, which is just, I can't quite believe, Robbie, when you've got as much talent on offense as you have in a quarterback like Russell Wilson, that this brand of football, this Pete Carroll brand of football, does somewhat rely on you being able to convert third downs. That's how you get your running plays. If you actually look at the numbers today, in terms of passing, 36 passes and 27 runs. And, how many of those runs, Alex Collins had 5 runs at the end when they were trying to kill the clock and finish the game. So really, you were talking more of a split of 36 passes and about 20 runs late in the game. And that's because you're not converting those third downs. You are, and you're chasing the game. And the Seahawks, in my opinion, cannot go into these playoff games hoping to win by putting themselves in position where they have to chase the game. They've got to be better on third downs. They've got to be able to sort of promote their running game by moving the sticks, putting the ball in the running backs' hands, and driving on from there, Robbie, because those third down numbers, they've not improved. When Pete Carroll gets asked about it, it's what's the issue there? He shrugged it off a few weeks ago and just went, oh, well, they've not been good enough. They're not good. We need to be better. It's like, well, yeah. Can we find a way to be better? You have a 6'4" monster wide receiver. Is there not something you can do, to just isolate him, move him across the formation, get a first down? You have, lots of tight ends on your roster, some very established guys. You have great running backs. Is there not, and a great quarterback? Is there not something you can do? If for me, Robbie, I will be saying to Brian Schottenheimer this week, right, Brian, I want you to spend 6 hours of one day this week coming up with 5 great plays for third down next weekend. That's what I want to see, because I don't know why they're so bad on third down.
Yeah, it falls on Shoddy every time. The play calling is just not good enough. And, you worry about playing a team like the Rams. And like I was saying, the last time we played them, you just don't want to get in those third and long situations, right? We got to give ourselves a better manageable third down. And, I'm getting really tired of the third down, third and short, and we're bombing it deep. I know it worked early in the season and we had a couple successful plays that way, but I'd really like to see us kind of get away from that and, take the shot if it's there, but don't really push it, actually, try to get the first down and go from there, try to, establish some momentum going forward and such. So it falls on Shoddy, but yeah, super frustrating. Yeah. 4 for 12 is just unacceptable.
And I feel like we do need to mention some positives, because, people again will say we've talked a lot about some of the issues, but I think these are the pressing concerns, Robbie. It wouldn't be much of a podcast if we sat here and just went, well, the award, I guess, and the 12 and 4, and fingers crossed they win next week. That, it'd be the shortest podcast we've done. So we've talked about some of the relevant topics. I thought Jordan Brooks had another good game. He led the team in tackles. Big hit from Quandre Diggs. Always like to see a big hit from a safety. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed KJ Wright's performance again. I personally feel like you've got to find a way to keep KJ Wright. He's just too good. It doesn't matter that he's probably my age. He needs to be re-signed. He's such a good player, Robbie.
Yeah, and he had a heck of a hit today as well.
He did. And a hit that I know Bobby Wagner was busy. So I'd like Bobby to have a few of those hits, frankly, rather than celebrating KJ's. KJ Wright was, I think KJ Wright he's everything that you want in a football player: tough, physical, dependable, great character, respected, leader. We're gonna sort of come off this Seahawks era, and there's still some players who are still here, Robbie. Been here forever. But your Wagners, your Cams, your Earls, Sherm, Marshawn. I really hope that when we kind of look back, when maybe we're all a lot older, 20 years time, whatever, that we're sat here talking about KJ Wright with those list of names as well, because he doesn't get as much cred and as much respect as some of those other guys, but he thoroughly deserves it. And frankly, I think my favorite players from this Seahawks era will always be Cam and Marshawn, but I'd like to think KJ Wright would be right up there purely from a man who deserves to have a lot more respect, I think, than he gets nationally, and certainly warrants being remembered as an absolute stud for the Seahawks, a legend, and someone who I want to see in Seahawks blue until the guy decides he's had enough, frankly. So I would make him a priority in the off season. And I can't believe I didn't mention it, right? I don't take every opportunity to mention this. When you were talking about the future of Shaquille Griffin, the guy that I want to be playing quarterback was sat in a booth watching this game in Arizona today, looking pretty chilled with his feet up, talking to Jimmy G, who was apparently, according to reports, done in San Francisco. I think Jay Glazer said that today, didn't he, or somebody, or was it Schefter or Mortensen or something? But anyway, bring Sherman home. That's my campaign for the off season. Bring Sherman home. Finish it off in Seattle. Get that guy playing on the outside again. And quite frankly, even if they manage to re-sign Shaquille Griffin, I'd have Sherman back. You can never have too many good cornerbacks. Nice depth. It would be nice to have some depth at that position for a change. Right, there was one big story, Robbie, that emerged today, which I want to get your thoughts on quickly. Ian Rappaport, who is the NFL's in-house insider. I always think that must be, because I get the impression that Ian Rappaport works very, very hard. He always seems to be tweeting at all hours of the night and day. He always seems quite flustered when he's on the TV, like he's just finished writing or tweeting or whatever, and then he's had to rush off to the TV. It gives the impression of a guy who sleeps about 4 hours a day. Then I always kind of wondered, what must it really be like to be the NFL's own insider? Because you must get so much help in that regard. You're the league's reporter. Anyway, he put out a story earlier that the Lions were going to make a huge play for John Schneider. And when I saw this, I quickly read and wrote up an article about this. This was pre-fingers being burnt, by the way. I don't think there'll be any long articles posted this week, just as a warning for that. I think my first reaction was that it feels a little bit like John's calling in a favor here. That maybe it doesn't hurt John to have his name linked to a team. And that they'll give him this, that, and the other, and control and power and a massive contract or whateve, Robbie. When his contract runs out next year, he's seen Pete Carroll get a 5-year extension. Per Mike Florio then jumped in on this. He was saying that Schneider's not amongst the highest paid GMs in the league, which I found a little bit surprising given he's been there for 10 years and has won a Super Bowl. You would have thought he would be up in that list, but that might be another reason why John Schneider is called in this favor. But one thing I will say, even if it is negotiating through the media, nobody should ever take for granted that there might not be something in this. You shouldn't assume that, well, it's the Lions, so whatever. No. It doesn't work that way. You can always have your head turned. You can always be offered stuff that you want. And GMs and head coaches and players, they're human beings. They're like us. there'll be part of John Schneider that thinks, I've done this job for 10 years and I don't even get the final say on personnel. And I know my mate down the road, who isn't as good as me as a GM, has got that. And he may well want that. And he may well think after 10 years of this, he wants a fresh start. And he wants to be able to pick his head coach. And he wants to be able to pick his staff. And he wants to have draft picks in the first round before 2023. He may well think those things. So I wouldn't assume that it's a load of bunkum from Ian Rappaport. But I also think it's negotiating through the media, Robbie. And I won't be surprised in the next few weeks whether we hear something about a big fat contract extension for John Schneider in Seattle.
Yeah, and then Mike Florio's article had stated that the big thing was the final authority versus like primary authority or whatever when it comes to decision making, and that's how they get around it, the loophole. But it wasn't as clear and cut as people think, that they could just sign John Schneider super easy, that there would have to be some sort of trade, which I always found a little interesting. Like, how do you trade a GM? Does he negotiate his own trade? Like, right? I mean, he does all the trading. Does he trade? You can have me for a first round pick.
That is a great point.
I don't know who. Yeah, I don't know who authorizes that. Yeah,
does the owner do it? I mean, would it be Carroll? I mean, how do you trade for a GM?
I don't know. Like, that was the confusing part for me. How do you trade yourself? But I mean, if I'm Snyder, I to be honest, I know a lot of people are like, oh, would want to go to the Lions. But I mean, if you got full control over a team, that, why wouldn't you not want to take the opportunity to build it from the ground up? If you could, I mean, you kind of did it in Seattle, right? You came in, you made, some crazy amount of moves within the first 2 years, like 200 transactions or something, and all these different players in and out, and trying to find the right guys. And you go there and you realize you've got draft picks, you've got aging quarterbacks that you can kind of get out and get somebody new in that you want. You can you can hire your head coach, you can do all these different things. I mean, I know Detroit Lions, like, there people are saying the Ford owners aren't the greatest or whatever, but I mean, if you have the opportunity to do it, why wouldn't you? I mean, it seems like here he doesn't have as much authority, as Pete does. And so Pete has final say, and Pete just got a new 5-year deal. But I kind of think you're right. I think it's just kind of negotiating through the media, and we'll probably see John Snyder sign a contract extension. I thought it was super funny. Mina Kimes, her post, how like people were complaining about John Snyder, about his draft picks or whatever, Seahawks Twitter. And then as soon as someone sniffs around trying to get him, everyone's flipping out like, you can't have John. So I thought it was super funny. I don't know, man. We'll see. It'd be interesting to see if they do end up getting, if he does leave for a different team, like who they would target, how that would change our offseason. I mean, those kind of things it'd be really interesting to see. I mean, and a new GM coming in, you'd have to wonder, like, you realize Pete has this much control. What are you going to really want to take the job? I mean, it's not going to be I don't think it would be a super attractive job to an up and coming GM. Maybe someone who's trying to get their foot in the door, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I'm not really sure.
I think they're the point from within. Trent Kirchner has been linked with a lot of jobs, and Scott Fitterer as well, isn't there? I'm convinced that one of those two guys would just step up to the plate, and they're not GMs, and if they were given a chance to be a GM, I'm sure they would take it. And why wouldn't you? I mean, it's a pay rise, and you get to be in charge of the team, even if you have to speak to the head honcho in Pete Carroll before you sign anything off. The other thing I wanted to talk briefly about, Robbie, was the playoffs in general, because we kind of know now what the playoff lineup is. I have not got it on my screen, which is, I guess, inconvenient if you're going to talk about it, but I think I can remember what the games were. Tennessee will play Baltimore again, which, I think will be a great game. Fascinating storyline there, because the Titans beat the Ravens last year, and the Ravens have played as well as anybody in the last few weeks. In fact, maybe with the exception of the Bills, you could say that they've been the best team in the AFC on this run that they've had. And whoever wins this game, Robbie, will fancy the chances in the AFC, because the Chiefs have been a bit hit and miss. I know they've won the games, but they've been a little bit hit and miss. Buffalo still kind of have to prove that they can win in the postseason. They've looked great.
They look good today, I'll tell you that.
They looked amazing, but they've still got it. That's a hurdle. I don't think people remember what happened last time. The Bills been in the playoffs twice in the Josh Allen era, and the first one ended very badly. And then the one last year, they completely bottled it. They collapsed against the Texans. So we've seen it with quarterbacks who get to the postseason and they just can't deliver when it matters. So that is something the Bills are going to have to show when they play their playoff game next week. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Browns, which, you know, to me, I know it's the division rivals, Robbie. That game is a bit boring to me. It doesn't really get me going, that game, to be perfectly honest. You know, and whoever wins, I think it's gonna be a bit of a battle, that game, isn't it? And I don't think either the Steelers or the Browns are primed to win the Super Bowl. And then the Bills against the Colts. Again, I can't get excited about Phillip Rivers in the playoffs. And I would imagine that the Bills, with the way that they're playing, will really fancy that. NFC wise, Seahawks Rams, we will talk about that in a lot of detail in the week. The other games, the Bears going to the Saints. I would imagine that the Saints will win. But hey, Robbie, we thought the Saints would win every playoff game they've lost for the last 5 years. I mean, they get to the playoffs and then some crazy shit happens and the Saints lose. That's just how it goes. So is it going to be next week that happens or what? And then the other game will obviously involve who have I missed out here? So the Saints against the Bears,
Saints in Chicago, and then probably well, we don't know it's Tampa Bay versus probably Washington. But I mean, if Washington loses tonight, then it's the Giants of all teams that are going to make it. So yeah.
And I wish the Seahawks were this team, but if there is one wild card team, Robbie, that, you know, if I was like the Packers, for example, that I would be fearful of, it's the Buccaneers. You know, the Buccaneers hammered the Packers earlier this year, albeit in Tampa Bay rather than at Lambeau. Tom Brady, great offensive skill players, you know, tough defense that get after the quarterback. That's a team that if I was Green Bay, I'd be fearful of playing. And if it's like an on-par weekend next weekend, and the Saints beat the Bears, and the Seahawks beat the Rams, and the Bucs beat either Washington or New York, then it will be the Packers against the Bucs and the Saints against the Seahawks. And, you know, this is the issue, and this is maybe something we'll talk about after the season, Robbie. If the Seahawks don't get to the NFC Championship game, being number 3 rather than number 2 or number 1 could be the main reason why. And it will end up being similar to 2016. I'm not sure that home field advantage is a massive thing these days, but you still have to travel, you still have to go, you still have to go and play somewhere else. There will be some fans in some stadiums. If you have to go to the Saints, well, it looks likely, Robbie, that they're going to have to, if they want to get to the Super Bowl, they're going to have to beat the Saints on the road and the Packers on the road. And that's going to be incredibly hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Saints game is, I mean, Chicago's got a pretty good defense, and you know, they rolled today with Ty Montgomery as running back. The Saints did, and you know, we're missing Alvin Kamara and you know, Latavius Murray and those guys, and you don't know with the COVID thing if they're going to be back next week or not. You know, there's still an outside chance that you know, the Bears could, you know, squeak that one out. But we're going to have to, you know, first of all, we're going to need to beat the Rams, because I think that's going to be a really tough test for us right out the gate. Like, this is not a team that I didn't really want to play again, to be honest. I don't really care who plays quarterback. I just didn't really want to play him again. I kind of want beat him, and like to win the NFC West. It's like, great, monkey's off our back. Oh, now we got to play him again. It's not really what I wanted, but you know, you look at it, we got to win that game first. And then, you know, if we're going to have to go on the road, I mean, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are playing pretty good, and I have a hard time seeing them losing right now. And we're gonna have to we'll probably end up having to go to Lambeau at some point and winning that game. That's going to be the biggest one.
Well, we'll see what happens. Of course, you know, if the Saints do win, you know, they're gonna have to beat that. They're gonna have to beat them first. But you know, it's always interesting. You always kind of like look forward to the playoff games. You know, it's you know, it's one game at a time, but it is very few teams win 2 games on the road to get to the Super Bowl. So that is the challenge that might well face the Seahawks as a consequence of finishing 3rd seed. One final thing to finish. I was watching the Bucs game earlier, Robbie. I was watching some of the Bucs game on Red Zone, and Tom Brady gives a shovel pass to Antonio Brown at the end. Needless play. I think it meant that he got $500,000 or $250,000 because of a bonus for number of catches. And then at the end of the game, the Seahawks did the same thing with David Moore in order for him to get his money. And Pete Carroll kind of looked a bit pissed off at first, but then smiled about it. And probably wondered, did he even know about that? And part of me does wonder a little bit, what would have happened if David Moore had fumbled that football and the Seahawks had have lost that game? Because, I like the fact David, could Russell Wilson have not just given David Moore like a few $1,000 or something? Did they really need to risk that there and then? I don't know. I find it amusing because it all's well that ends well, I guess. But I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm buying into this get Antonio Brown and David Moore a bit of extra beer money this weekend and run the risk of something going horribly wrong.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, it pissed me off. I did not like that at all. I think it's a not very classy move at all. I think if you have a chance just to win the game, you take the knee, call it good. But instead, they decide to run a play, and yeah, you're right. I mean, if you would have fumbled and they pick it up and run it in for a touchdown, we'd be talking very differently, and everyone would be super mad, and it was just classless. I don't like it. I don't care if David Moore gets a bonus for not, it doesn't matter. Then if you want to get him to him earlier in the game. You seem to target him all the time early in the games. Why can't you give it to him, previously? I didn't like it at all. And then, it clearly pissed the Niners off because, when we went to take that knee down, they came after hard after that. And rightfully so. I just didn't think it was a very smart play. It was overall just kind of dumb. And, I would definitely be having a talk with people about that if I was the coach. There's unnecessary risk, unnecessary play, take the knee, win the game. Who cares about the bonus money? That's not something you should be worried about.
Aaron Donald was interviewed after the Rams game. That's what we wanted. That's exactly what we wanted. That was his response to facing the Seahawks next week. And listen, I think everybody's going to be, fairly content that it's the Rams next week. Sean McVay, Aaron Donald. Don't take anything for granted. It was 6-0 at half time last week.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember McVay has, just because they only scored 9 last time, they can easily put up 40 on us real fast. That's a good offense.
But this is also a chance for the Seahawks, to prove that, that they can get after the Rams now, regardless of whether Goff plays or not. If they can win another game playing their style against the Rams, it is the best opponent to play because, all of a sudden we're talking about 2 games in close proximity, Robbie, where the Rams have had a good look at you and have come back a couple of weeks later and play you again. And if you can do it again, then it bodes well for the future, let's say. But they're going to be a very, 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 very tough opponent. And we will talk about that in depth next week. Always interesting. If anybody has any tips on how to sleep with severely burnt fingers, I'm convinced that I'm running the risk of being accused of being a pansy again by harping on about the fingers, but they really hurt. So if anybody's got any tips, I've just had them in a glass for the last sort of 7 hours of ice cold water, and they're not getting any better. I suspect that I'm going to be watching the whole of this Washington Philadelphia game, not through choice, but because I just can't sleep. So if anyone's got any tips on burnt fingers, get into the comments section and let us know. Are you going to chime in?
Tylenol PM. Yeah, take some Tylenol PM. You'll be all right.
Yeah, it was either that. I was just going to drink a bottle of whiskey, but no,
both work.
That one or the other. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Happy New Year again to everybody. Hope you had a great Christmas and a good New Year. Our tree is down. It's done. It's finished. We're moving on. Hopefully, we can be able to enjoy a playoff campaign that lasts beyond a couple of weeks this year, and hopefully, particularly with it longer than a week. We will talk about that in the week. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. Please like the video. Great numbers for the last 2 videos. It's funny how when the positivity is going and the Seahawks are winning, how more of you are watching the video. So let's hope that this one does that as well. And it always helps if you can help get the message out there. Help leave a comment as well. Also helps promote the video. Thank you for all of your support this year. We're back in the week to talk about the Rams. Until then, we'll see you soon.